Welcome to oursanskrit.com, and to this, the fifth lesson in this series of lessons. In lesson 4, we took a story from the Hitopadesha and analyzed the grammatical structure of the text. In this lesson, the fifth one, we will look at the imperfect active of thematic verbs. We will also look at vowel sandhis. It is important to learn how sandhis work, as any full sentence written in Sanskrit is sure to contain sandhis. Unless you know how to separate out the words and get their uncombined form, it will be difficult to understand what is being said. Let us look at the imperfect active conjugation. The imperfect tense is called lang by the Sanskrit grammarians. The imperfect is used to indicate a past action. Rama saw Krishna, etc. The imperfect endings are slightly different from the present endings. These endings are called secondary endings, while the endings of the present are called primary endings. This is because the imperfect endings seem to be a briefer version of the present endings. Of course, like the present, there are two different sets of endings, one for the active voice and one for the middle voice. We will learn the active voice in this lesson and the middle one in the next. Take a look at the imperfect active endings. We can now see why these are called secondary endings. Instead of T, we have Th, and instead of C, we have S, etc. The formation of the imperfect conjugation is done in a fashion similar to the present. Let us take the class 4 root pash as we did in lesson 1. As in the case of the present, we add a ya to the root to get the stem, then add the secondary endings. The main difference is that the imperfect tense takes an augment a in the beginning. So the stem is pash plus ya, pashya. Then the endings are added. For example, for the third person singular, the ending th is added to get pashyat. Then the augment a is attached to the beginning to get apashyat. In a similar manner, we can derive the forms for the other persons and numbers. The full conjugation is given here. As in the case of the present tense, the forms for the first person dual and plural have the final vowel of the stem lengthened before adding the endings. Also, the third person plural and the first person singular use briefer endings in and and not an and Before we look at Sandhis, let us understand the process of forming a word or a sentence in Sanskrit. First of all, we need to get to understand the concept of a word, a stem, and a root properly. A word in Sanskrit is a stem to which inflectional endings have been added. The stem could be a simple one or a compound. We said in lesson 1 that all words are traceable to a root. Now, a stem is derived from the root by the addition of derivational suffixes. Many a time, some prefixes and occasionally an augment is also added at the beginning. A compound stem is formed by joining many stems together. Finally, the inflectional suffixes are added to the stem to form the word. A sentence is a word strung together to make a construct that is meaningful. Now we can look at sandhis. A sandhi is possible in all the places where there is a plus here. The ending sound before the plus and the beginning sound after the plus may change as per euphonic laws. We touched briefly on this in lessons 1 and 3. The sandhi between words is called an external sandhi, while the sandhi within a word is called an internal sandhi. The rules for external sandhi and internal sandhi are mainly the same, but there are some differences. In lesson 3, when we looked at forming the stem of the thematic verb ni, we said that in internal sandhi, a plus a becomes aya. Therefore, ni, when gunated, becomes ne. Add a, you get naya. But in external Sandhi, the intervening year is dropped and the hiatus remains. Therefore, Nagare plus Iha becomes Nagara Iha, not Nagara Iha, as would have happened in internal Sandhi. In these lessons, we will mainly deal with external Sandhi. We will mention any different rule for internal Sandhi only if and when required. Please go to oursanskrit.com lesson 5 to see a detailed listing of all the main vowel Sandhis that are shown here. This is the end of lesson 5. In this lesson, we looked at the imperfect active of thematic verbs. We also looked at vowel sandhis.